There's been a lot of stress in all of our lives lately, so let's discuss some of the ways that that's going to affect us physically, and then maybe go over a couple of ways that we can deal with that stress so that it's not going to be causing too many problems. So the first thing we need to talk about here are the different types of stress. We have acute stress and we have chronic stress. All right, acute stress, that's going to be your fight or flight. That's an immediate, the body is going to kick off, it's going to dump a bunch of adrenaline into our system and cortisol. Okay, so this is, as I said, our fight or flight, so we need to be able to respond immediately to typically to danger. Now, there's very little in our lives right now that require us to either hit something or run away from something, but that setup still remains in our DNA. Now, what we're going to want to do is understand kind of how this works. Adrenaline, this is going to kick up our blood pressure. It's going to give us that immediate burst of energy, dilate the blood vessels, increase the lung capacity, and get us ready for physical activity. And then the cortisol, we think of this as more of a chronic stress hormone, but that cortisol is going to help our body with faster uptake of sugar for more energy. Okay, so and then chronic stress, this is the long-term buildup. So these are the stressors that are like always in the back of the mind. These are the stressors that are more kind of building up over time. And that chronic stress can also be caused by acute stress if we have a lot of things in our lives that are causing those immediate reactions and we're not able to physically do something about it. Okay, so chronic stress is a long-term buildup, and it's typically an accumulation of factors. So as I said, it's a lot of the acute stressors that we're not able to burn off that adrenaline and cortisol, and then it's also worrying about, you know, how do I keep the kids occupied, or how do I get them logged in for their Schoolology, what am I going to do about paying the bills and everything else. So again, that is our accumulation of chronic stress that build up, and there's a lot of cortisol involved there as well. The problems with the the chronic stress, some of the physical manifestations are going to be things like fatigue, irritability, headache, intestinal issues. That could be going in both directions, constipation or diarrhea. We have anxiety, weight gain. We're going to go into that in a couple of minutes. Increased blood pressure, decreased libido. So if we want to have all those coronavirus babies 9 months from now, we need to kind of take care of some of this stuff. So when we're looking at how do we deal with this, we can't stop the stress. All right, understand that we're not going to stop the stressors that are in our life, but what we are going to try and do is deal with them, preferably as they happen. But if not, we're going to have some long-term steps that we can use to mitigate the long-term buildup of stress. Okay. So we're looking at the acute, the fight or flight, you know, being physically active, getting that, taking advantage of that adrenaline, taking advantage of those things, and getting in that workout, okay? It does not have to be something long and drawn out. It can be one of these simple little 15, 20-minute workouts that are popping up all over the place. Use one of the KSV workouts, use something else that's clogging up your emails and your social media feed. Do something, okay? Get that physical activity and burn off some of that adrenaline, burn off some of that buildup of glycogen that's been accumulating in your system so that it's not sitting there long term, okay? That's going to be your immediate reaction. And like I said, it does not have to be a full-blown workout. Throw down a couple of burpees, just get something physically done to help burn off some of that stress. The long term, this is what's going to cause problems the longer our current situation extends. All right, we're about 2 weeks in, and we may have another 4 weeks, 6 weeks, nobody knows. That's causing more stress. We don't know when this is going to terminate, when we're going to get back on with our regular lives. So just another factor that's going to build up in stress. So what we want to do here is we want to stay active. As we think about this, a couple of things that are considered critical in staying open are what? There are liquor stores, pot dispensaries, and grocery stores. And what do? You come home and you try and binge watch season 4 of The Office. Okay, so we have access to food. That's not an issue. We have we're becoming more sedentary because we're not going outside and doing as much because we're afraid of social interaction. So we are going to start building up more of the stress. All right. Fatigue, irritability, headache. That is, as we accumulate stress, what the body's going to try and do is it's going to try and conserve energy. All right? That is one of the things that we have done over millennia in order to deal with things like, you know, the year of bad crops or siege or just not being able to find food. Our bodies will begin to shut things down and conserve energy as much as possible. So that fatigue is your body's way of trying to conserve energy. Irritability. Guess what? You know, you're stuck inside. You're dealing with a number of things. Everybody in the household is stressed. So how do we deal with that, or the fact that we are going to have to deal with that? Headache, intestinal issues, healthy diet, that's going to be a key factor right there. We're going to have to maintain that healthier diet in order to make sure that we're staying regular and we're not having any kind of problems one way or another. So we're looking at dealing with the long-term effects of buildup of stress. Some of the things we can do to start mitigating that is diet and exercise. I can't say that enough. When we're looking at exercise, again, something regular, something consistent, something that's on a timeline, that's definitely going to help. Does not have to be real aggressive, doesn't have to be real long, but it should be just a part of the regular part of the program, regular part of the day. And that brings us into another way to start to mitigate that stress. Having a schedule. As we kind of wander aimlessly through a day, that's going to cause other stressors. And if we have a schedule, if we're sticking to that schedule, that's also going to help mitigate some of the effects of the stress. Part of that schedule is also your eating schedule. One of the big problems that I think we're going to run into long term with being homebound is not having like a regular meal schedule. It's really easy to be sitting on the couch, you're reading, you're watching TV, something. You get up, you go to the pantry, you go to the fridge, you look in there. You're not hungry, you're bored. Okay, so getting back on a regular eating schedule will also help to mitigate some of the long-term buildup of stress. When we start looking at those eating habits, some of the other things that we need to look at is what we're eating. We mentioned that adrenaline and cortisol are part of the acute stress, and that cortisol is going to help with the uptake of glucose, glycogen. That's your sugar. So if we have that long-term buildup of cortisol, what we're doing is the body wants to take in and uptake more and more glycogen. That's going to lead to some other big problems down the road. We start looking at type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance, those sorts of things. So making sure that our diets they don't have to be perfect, but making sure that our diets are lower in processed sugars, lower in like white breads, lower in sweet drinks, juices, those kind of things. If we are not burning off those excess sugars, we wind up with higher blood sugar levels, we wind up with more of that accumulating in the liver, and eventually that sugar is going to get converted into triglycerides. The triglyceride is a fat, and then that fat has to be deposited somewhere. So the long-term effects of stress are typically holding on to more body fat. Okay, so again, all these things are building up over time. So we start looking at, again, reducing some of the processed sugars that are in our diet, understanding that alcohol converts into sugar. So I'm not telling you don't, I'm telling you be aware of and understand how every decision is going to affect us and our stress. Anyhow, that's some of the things that we're going to use, some of the skill sets that we can use to help mitigate the effects of both acute and chronic stress. There'll be more coming out like this, as well as the exercise activity videos. So stick around and check back often.